Long, long ago, there was a witch who slept in a thorny forest for 1,000 years. One day, she was found by a handsome, golden-haired prince. He was super young, and the witch took him under her wing. But when he turned 15, she left him without a word. The witch went back to sleep, and the prince trekked the forest for ages to find her. After gaining massive power and authority, he chopped through thorny vines and battled monsters. His goal was to reach the tiny castle where the witch was sleeping. The prince hadn't seen her for 10 years straight. When he finally found her, he burned the forest and her house to the ground and proposed. The fairy tale ended with them living long and happy ever after. The heroine instantly realized this story was about her. The man beside her loved her so much, he was ready to destroy everything. His name was Reichert Cedric von Delium. He was the Emperor of Elysium and the very prince from the fairy tale. Ariel Ashild, Louise Arundel, meanwhile, was the witch who'd raised him. The Emperor couldn't decide. Was he gonna destroy her or make her happy? Ariel wasn't so sure they'd even make it to happily ever after. Cedric had the endgame all figured out, but he couldn't promise she'd like the ride there. The heroine decided the journey mattered too, and clocked him across the face with a pillow. The Emperor couldn't get why it bugged her so much what he planned to do. Just a little patience, and she'd see it all for herself. Ariel was in shock, couldn't figure out when it all went sideways. She'd been cozy in her monster woods until Cedric showed up to rouse her and haul her out. Weird how this kid had already become the country's ruler. When the heroine stepped into the real world, she felt like 1,000 years had already passed. The Emperor hauled her straight to the palace, didn't give her time to adjust, and Ariel's arrival threw the whole place into chaos. When word got out she was from the eastern forest, folks labeled her a country bumpkin and started whispering behind her back. The heroine began overhearing all the nasty gossip about herself. She'd only been there a short time, still clueless how this world worked, and her questions probably made her look even dumber. Plus, Ariel couldn't read modern script, basically illiterate. Unfair, considering she was actually Princess Ashild, the Kingdom Arundel's greatest sorceress. One day, she saw two mages carrying cultural relics evacuated from the monster-infested forest. The heroine instantly realized these were items from her home. The mages accidentally opened one of the books and lost it when they saw notes in an ancient language. The book looked super familiar, but Ariel couldn't place it. It hit her. It was the diary she'd kept at 15. The mages called this manuscript a major discovery, and when they saw Ashild's signature, they lost it. They were beside themselves with excitement they'd found records she'd written. This whole mess started about 15 years ago. Like every time before, Ariel was peacefully sleeping in a tiny cabin at the forest's edge. Her eyes fluttered open, and there he was, a golden-haired kid standing right in front of her. For a second, she thought she was looking at an angel, but all doubts vanished when he asked if she was really alive. To test it, he was about to slit her throat, dagger already raised. Ariel quickly countered. If he did that, no one would wake up. The future emperor blinked at her, like he had other options. Eastern Forest is crawling with thorn bushes and monster trees, and time here moves slower than outside. Its borders are totally impenetrable, and Ariel spent years trapped in this lonely place. Every time the forest's seal weakened, she'd wake up with a ton to do. She'd check the magic circle and the sealed portal in the woods. Then she'd chill and study magic. Had to make progress fast before the awakening wore off. But this time, as Ariel sat at her desk, someone started pounding on her door. She pretended not to hear, and young Cedric accidentally kicked the door in. He was laughing like a kid, happy it actually worked. That kid wrecked her peaceful existence. He was poking around the witch's house and knocked over a few plates. Ariel was confused. What even was this kid? No one had been able to get into this forest for ages. Cedric remembered his mom's warning, don't talk to strangers. She lost it, and figured threatening him with a knife wasn't the way to go. He quickly clarified that she was the one who opened her eyes. He knew the deal. Sleeping princess in the woods wakes up after the prince's kiss. But even after that, she kept sleeping. Cedric figured the curse might not break. She was a witch after all. Ariel was stunned. She kicked him out like a champ. The prince clarified he covered her nose and mouth, but she still went pale during the kiss. He stopped. His mom taught him not to kill people. First, he planned to bonk her with a rock. Then, he remembered his mom's advice, no cracking skulls, so he went for her throat with a dagger to wake her. But the witch woke up first. She clarified, throat stabs kill people. Cedric bolted for the window. She hoped he'd just go home. Instead, the kid grabbed magic energy clumps, felt Ashild's magic all over the place. Ariel froze. This was impossible. She grabbed his shoulders. How do you even know about that sorceress and her magic? Hundreds of years should have passed in the outside world. She was supposed to be forgotten. But somehow, the kid knew the forest's magic was hers. The case led them to ancient ruins and magical artifacts. Cedric noticed the magical circles still charged with Ashild's magic. After that, he leapt down and sprinted toward the woods. The young prince could feel her power here, stronger than in the artifacts. The forest's magic swirled around the kid, like it was greeting a master magician. Suddenly, the kid snapped to the fact he had to leave. Ariel followed him, and soon, Cedric stood at the heart of a magic circle. He decided he'd bring some toys next time. He stomped his foot and vanished in a blinding pillar of light. The heroine was floored by what she saw. Only master magicians can use this circle. Realizing he was a prodigy, she almost decided to take him as an apprentice, but she chose to just let him be. After all, he never stuck around long. She told the beast of a tree to hold back uninvited visitors. She lay down for a nap, only to jolt awake when Cedric blew the door to smithereens. Ariel couldn't figure out how he just wrecked her like that. Turns out, the monster tree gave him a hand. Spotting a broken branch on the floor, Ariel thought the kid yanked it off a poor tree. But it turned out he almost tripped while running, and the monster tree caught him. Hearing that, Ariel was stunned again. The forest usually hates outsiders, but it adores this kid. Plus, Ariel sensed massive magical power in him. Either way, she now called the monster tree a traitor. Cedric tugged him to play, but the witch quickly reminded them this wasn't a playground. Suddenly, Ariel noticed something odd and gave the kid a closer look. Scars and cuts lined his neck and arms, like someone was beating the kid up all the time. He wore fancy clothes and looked healthy, so he definitely came from a rich family. She remembered the kid mentioning a magical circle in his garden, so he lived in a pretty big house. Only folks who could hurt him there were family, parents, or close servants. Ariel decided not to dwell on it and stir up trouble for no reason. She saw him as a little pup just running over to play around, so she stopped caring, even when she noticed fresh cuts and bruises on his body. But Ariel couldn't help it. She kept glancing back every now and then. The worst part, Cedric noticed every single time. The heroine figured he'd forget about this forest soon, and things would go back to normal. But one day, the boy showed up so bruised and battered it was impossible to ignore. He and his mom lived in a palace where everyone ignored them both. He was a maid's son. No one dared get close to the prince, whose life was hanging by a thread. Recently, he crossed paths with his stepbrother, Frederick Brian Vandalium. He couldn't decide where to hit the idiot Cedric today. Later, while patching him up, Ariel couldn't wrap her head around how anyone could hit a kid like that. Then it hit the young prince. His horse had been killed. Brian was getting under his skin, so Cedric decided to kill his stepbrother, until he remembered his mom's rule. No killing people. So to hurt him, the kid set a trap the next time Brian rode his horse. The brother tumbled off. His horse tripped on a rope. In the end, the horse was killed because Brian got hurt from it. Cedric wanted his brother dead more than anything, but unfortunately, only the poor animal ended up dying. The heroine was glad he at least cared about someone. Brian drove him so crazy, the kid wanted to rip his eyes out. But for some reason, their mom even forbade that. Ariel was in shock, couldn't figure out what was wrong with this kid. He honestly hoped that when he grew up, he'd finally be able to make all his plans come true. The witch found some comfort in the fact that he at least listened to someone. His mom had put in so much work raising him, and one little mistake could brand him a villain in history. Ariel genuinely respected that woman and decided to find out what Cedric's mom was up to now. Hearing the reply that she was dead, the heroine froze in shock. Her last request was that her son never kill people, so the young prince had to fulfill it. Ariel was impressed by how hard his mother had tried to fix his personality right up until the end. Besides, if she'd lived just a little longer, the kid might have turned out way better. The heroine decided to ask, wasn't anyone stopping his brother from fighting? Cedric remembered how Brian showed up on crutches, accusing him of horse killing and breaking his own leg. The kid thought it'd be better to think this through real hard. The brother snapped and swung the crutch at his face. Then he started beating him senseless and hurling insults. The housemaids watched from behind the door. No one stopped Brian, because Cedric was just a bastard son of some useless servant, a prince in name only. A few minutes later, the brother stopped pounding him and panted heavy from exhaustion. He vowed he'd kill him for sure next time they crossed paths. Cedric smirked, wiped blood off his hand, and dryly asked, "You done yet?" Brian saw that smug grin and lunged to choke the life out of Cedric. From this, Ariel realized they bullied him because of his mom's lowborn trash. No one cared he was getting beaten up or how alone he was after she died. She wanted to know, was there literally no one who gave a damn about him? Cedric remembered the servants gave him clothes, food, and basic stuff. Plus, he'd really loved the candies Ariel had slipped him. Now she got why the kid stuck around the woods so long and always came back to play. He can only smile like this when he comes here. Suddenly, he felt better and ripped off the bandage on his face. The heroine was shocked at how fast the medicine kicked in. Cedric, on the other hand, couldn't wrap his head around whether the witch actually knew her stuff. Ariel quickly clarified she wasn't a witch, and suddenly the kid got curious. Just who exactly was she? At that moment, she was completely flustered and frozen in place. Deciding not to take chances and hide her true Ashield identity, the heroine introduced herself as Ariel. Cedric introduced himself too, and she figured he could come hang out and play anytime he wanted. From that day on, he'd come running back, playing with the tree monsters. Besides, he kept getting new cuts and bruises all the time. The heroine believed the kid would grow up, lose interest, and never come back. She couldn't stop him from getting hurt, so she decided to heal the wounds faster. Ariel wanted him to never feel the pain, no matter what injuries he got. She thought she could take care of him in any situation without hurting either of them. But one day, he showed up covered in blood, holding a blood-stained knife, with a calm smile on his face. A bunch of questions flashed through her head, but the shock left her speechless. What creeped her out more was that Cedric had no cuts, and the blood definitely wasn't his. The kid was hunting for snacks, but Ariel snapped out of her daze and demanded to know what he'd messed up. When she heard it was Brian's doing, she prayed he'd just gotten splashed with blood. Turns out, Brian was just flexing his new stallion. He rode up to him and dared him. Would he take out the horse too? The stable hands rushed to explain this hulking beast wasn't trained yet. Strolling around with it was a death trap. Brian shut them up with a wave and herded the muscled horse toward Cedric. Then he cracked the whip. Horse reared up in a flash. Massive hooves came flying straight for the kid's face. But a second later, the giant horse was down. Dead. Blood gushing from its neck like a fountain. No one could figure out how it even happened. Cedric exhaled calmly. That was dangerous. And, he added, watch your pets better next time. Brian spotted the knife in his hand, peed his pants, and bolted to Mom. After hearing this story, Ariel was baffled. The young hero knew he had no choice. His life was on the line. Ariel knew any other kid in his shoes would have just panicked. She figured this time, he'd done the right thing. If his life was in danger, striking first was the way to go. Now it was time for a bath. She sat him in the tub and scrubbed like crazy. Blood clung to his skin, refusing to wash away. Then she dressed him in clean clothes Daniel had once worn. Ariel couldn't figure it. Did no one care he'd been wandering around bloody? Cedric figured his servants were always too busy. Hence, no one showed up. He recalled his mom's words. After her death, everyone who got close would have ulterior motives. No one would do a damn thing for him without an angle, so he had to stay sharp. Ariel got it, and she couldn't agree more. She was probably freaking out about how he'd handle the cold, heartless world all alone, so the only way he'd make it to adulthood was to get cold, get suspicious, and start seeing everyone as a threat. But you can't even begin to imagine the isolation he's going through. Life would have been easier if his personality was simple and straightforward. But Cedric was born with the kind of vibe that could make even the most indifferent people question themselves. Ariel decided to point out that he was seriously hot. The kid was shocked. No one had ever called him anything but scary. Ariel knew a kid with a knife was legitimately terrifying, especially when he was covered in blood and grinning. Then he suddenly said, Ariel, you're really something. But it wasn't her looks he was talking about. Cedric liked the colorful glow that surrounded her. Out of everyone he'd met, only Ariel had that glowing aura. Ariel was confused. Magical eyes? That's a sign of a born wizard. She grabbed him and ran outside to test it. Drew a magic circle in the dirt. He just had to remember the chant and connect the red dot to green. As soon as he did, a glowing pentagram appeared in the air. Suddenly, wild flames erupted from the center. Cedric realized he could control the flames and grinned, twisting the fire into shapes. Ariel couldn't believe he managed to pull off a decent-level pentagram with just 2 points. The fire set the tree monster ablaze, and it started howling with tears. The heroine immediately barked at the boy to use water magic. Cedric took 2 seconds to figure it out, and a massive tsunami drenched the whole area. Ariel was soaked to the bone and realized she was looking at a true prodigy. She decided their meeting was meant to be. After that, the heroine turned greedy and made a decision she wasn't supposed to make. On one hand, she knew it'd take her a lot of time to fix the young hero's personality, but she craved making him a powerful magician. Besides, what if it all backfired on her? At that moment, the boy decided to clarify what she was thinking. Ariel clamped her hands on his shoulders and decided to teach him magic. Cedric was taken completely by surprise. The heroine decided then he'd be strong enough to take down Brian. The boy decided if she wanted it, he'd give it a shot. Ariel was thrilled and decided to hand him an advanced magic book next time. She led him to the library and started energetically gathering manuscripts. Cedric opened one and couldn't believe his eyes. Were those even letters? Turns out, he'd never seen writing like this before. Ariel was stunned that the young lord of a grand estate hadn't even been taught to read. She learned he'd had tutors, until his mother passed away. The heroine realized this was his family's doing again. The perfect way to torment a kid is to turn them into a useless fool. She figured they weren't teaching him, so he'd never have a chance to run off, even as an adult. Ariel vowed to work her tail off with him and turn him into a brilliant mage, no matter what. She started by hunting down basic books to teach him the alphabet. Turns out, Cedric already knew modern letters. She'd been trying to teach him an ancient language. Meanwhile, the heroine dug up a picture-based magic book from her stash. She couldn't get what Daniel was thinking, gathering all that in the lab. Hearing the name again, Cedric wondered who the heck they were talking about. He couldn't believe it. Was there really someone else in the magical forest? Ariel let out a heavy sigh. No one else? Definitely not. He'd been dead for ages. Cedric changed the subject. Surprised by the sheer number of books in her basement, the heroine decided once they got the basics down, she'd let him tackle the rest. The first days of lessons flew by. The kid picked up most of the basics fast. Training could start. Cedric didn't get it. If he could see the magic, wasn't memorizing the circles good enough? Ariel quickly clarified the sight only helped at first. That way, he wouldn't get the deeper knowledge. The kid thought it weird she was so into magic, but never used it. After that, he was about to leave, until the heroine suddenly stopped him. She handed him a book of basic magic circles. Said he could read it on his own time. Cedric was blown away by the unexpected gift. Later, he dug up info on how to boost fire magic. The book's notes were in Arundel's ancient tongue. Plus, it mentioned a magic, echoes of which Ariel herself had. She's living alone in a magical forest, speaks ancient languages, knows the ins and outs of magic. Yet she gets along just fine with monsters. The young prince thought she was fascinating. The more he learned, the more intrigued he got. One night, he dozed off with a book in his hands, and not long after, a servant slipped into his room. Cedric woke up the next morning to the scorching sunlight glaring in his eyes. Suddenly, he realized the book was gone without a trace. He shot out into the hallway, hoping to catch the servant who'd been there the night before. Turning the corner, he spotted Brian holding the book, just handed to him by the servant. Cedric assumed this creep had stolen it from someone, then suddenly caught Brian's wild, furious glare. Remembering how his horse had died, Brian panicked. Terrified the same fate was coming for him, he bolted, screaming for his mother's help. The servant who'd snatched the book tried to make a quiet escape, but Cedric barked at him, eyes locked in a cold, steely glare. Right then, a knight showed up, asking what the hell was going on. The kid immediately figured out. Something belonging to the imperial family had been stolen. He got word the culprit would have their pay cut and be sent to hard labor. Then, Cedric remembered the old law about thieves getting their hands chopped off. The servant went deathly pale. He wanted that thief to pay immediately, right in front of him. The knight quickly clarified it was an outdated rule, but the young hero was ready to do it himself. The servant broke down sobbing, begging for mercy, and blamed Prince Brian for ordering the theft. The soldier called him a fool and carried out Cedric's order in an instant. Stealing wasn't enough. He was now insulting a member of the royal family. The knight was stunned the young prince hadn't flinched at the sight. Cedric just shrugged. He didn't care. The housemaids were horrified by his cold, unshakable calm. A kid who'd always been different faced endless criticism and rejection. To him, emotions were a foreign language, and right or wrong, a blurry mess. One day, a stray cat stuck to Cedric, and he had no idea why it wouldn't leave him alone. His mom rushed to explain the cat found him cute, and that's how cats showed love. Then Cedric started clinging to his mom, and she reminded him only cats do that. Later, Cedric thought cats were weird, small, soft, and all fuzzy. His mom thought they were cute and showed him how to scratch their heads. The kid remembered some flowers were cute too, and decided to give them a scratch. His mom didn't think it mattered, and he didn't get why there was a difference. While all this was happening, the woman wondered if her boy could turn out okay. Later, they found the same cat lying in a puddle of its own blood. Staring at the mangled body, she figured a horse must have run it over. Right then, Cedric remembered. Cats are cute, you gotta scratch them. He reached out for the bloodied head, but his mom yanked his hand back. She decided to give the little guy a proper burial and grieve. Later, he laid a tiny flower on the kitten's grave. She watched closely and realized he was starting to get it. She taught him not to go around killing or maiming people and to keep his power under wraps. Before she died, she made sure he knew how much she loved him. She really wanted him to one day get what all that meant. So his mom was always hoping that Cedric would someday find someone special to stick around with. But after she died, the whole world turned gray for him. People, everything, just lifeless. He came back to the castle all alone. No one cared. One day, the kid wandered into an old magic circle tucked in the corner of the garden. Stepping onto it, Cedric suddenly felt this rush of Ashold's magic. In that instant, power surged through his body, and the circle lit up. The kid, along with his magic, got sucked in, plopped right into the middle of a forest. He walked a bit, and to his shock, spotted a house. Curious, he stepped inside and found her in the bedroom. Then, he noticed something weird. Only she and the magic around her were colored in this gray world. Asleep, Ariel looked stunning, glowing like a damn angel. He wondered what she'd look like when she moved. So he plopped down right there, waiting for her to wake up. But hours passed and she didn't budge. Finally, he grabbed a huge boulder and chucked it at her head to wake her up. But then he remembered his mom's words, "Don't throw stones at people." So he headed home and decided to wait another day. When he came back the next day, he couldn't believe, was she still asleep? Suddenly, he heard a strange rustling. He turned around and saw the tree monster. The kid was confused. What did this monster want from him? There was a forest in the east, swarming with monsters, where time had stopped. Legends said it was impossible to reach. No one had ever made it inside. And then Cedric realized he was standing right in that forest. The air was thick with Ashold's magic. Even the castle's antiques didn't have this much power. He poked the tree monster with a stick, hoping it'd move. He needed to figure out, who was that girl in the house? She couldn't be a witch. Her magic would have been obvious. Then it hit Cedric. Remembered the fairy tale his mom used to read him. In that story, the prince woke the sleeping beauty with a kiss. A few minutes later, he stood at her bedside, grinning with determination. The boy leaned in and gently kissed her right on the forehead. Since he's a prince, she should wake up right away. But there was no reaction, so he decided to lightly stab her neck with a dagger, hoping the pain would jolt her awake. He crouched over her chest, pressed the blade to her throat, and suddenly, her eyes snapped open. In that instant, it felt like rose-colored glasses had been slapped over his eyes, and he saw the heroine's golden pupils swirling, making his head spin. Truth was, she was in total shock and had no clue what was going on. That day, a guy showed up who totally stole the young prince's attention. Now, Ariel heard the story that his servant had betrayed him to Brian and stolen the book. The heroine went ballistic over the news and decided she should have dealt with this guy ages ago. Either way, that book was a rare edition, and there's no other like it. But Cedric wasn't about to let her off easy, and vowed to protect his first gift from Ariel. The heroine figured the servant was the only one to blame, and heard in return that the boy had ordered his hand cut off. Patting his head, Ariel decided he'd done the right thing. Cedric was stunned by her reaction. Everyone else had been horrified, but Ariel thought it was better to go through with it than chicken out, and just put up with it. Gave the kid another round of praise, then decided to finally wash the blood off him. Cedric was still confused. She used to be terrified of him, but turns out she was just being careful. Cleaning the blood wasn't a problem, but that smell? Whole different ballgame. While Ariel hunted for special soap, the boy's determination to claim her kept tightening its grip. He loved this forest with everything he had. No one here could snatch the heroine away. She practically handed the prince an excuse to chase her when he was bored out of his mind. The stolen book landed in the hands of mages, who were totally blown away by what they found inside. Found out it belonged to Cedric, so they figured he might have stumbled onto some ruins by accident. Ansel, Viscount Price's second son, royal squire, and special ops intel guy, caught wind of this. Knew this wasn't something that'd just blow over, so he marched straight to his mistress with the report. He personally checked the book and confirmed it came from a magic kingdom older than a millennium. Owner was Cedric, and the hero wanted to know what to do about it. The woman in the chair told him to start tailing the prince in secret, using his own judgment. A little later, two mages decided to keep an eye on the prince too. Cedric noticed them from the start, but kept it under wraps. When the wizards let their guard down, he suddenly appeared before them. They immediately took off running at full speed. The young prince couldn't figure it out. Had they really liked the book Ariel gave them that much? Either way, they needed to be more careful heading into the forest. When he approached the magic circle, he got the feeling he was being watched again. But when he turned that way, there was no one there. After that, Ansel calmly watched the young prince vanish in a pillar of light. Because of the wizard's carelessness, Cedric became more cautious, so the hero almost got caught. When the prince vanished, he crouched by the circle and sensed Asheld's magic. Meanwhile, the boy apologized to the heroine for being gone so long. He'd been tailed by strange people. For Ariel, only a couple of days had passed, and she remembered that time didn't flow here in the forest. The young hero was annoyed by the surveillance. After all, if they'd just trailed him quietly, it would have been less obvious. The heroine was also wary of that detail, because if they learned the truth about Cedric in this forest, it'd cause problems. So she decided to teach him how to wipe out magic traces and stay off the radar. The kid was shocked. Could this stuff even be real? Wind could mask noise. Earth's power could erase footprints. The second she demonstrated the magic circle, Cedric had it memorized and nailed it on the first try. He ducked behind a tree just as the tree monster lost his trail. Cedric was over the moon. He figured he could now ghost through places without a trace. Ariel tossed him a book for self-study days. He couldn't make it here. After that, hanging out in the woods with her young hero became her new favorite pastime. One winter night, they conjured up music and danced the night away. They stuffed the room with tangerines and ate until they hit the limit. That evening, they just sat back and watched the snow come down. Spring rolled around. They brewed magic berries and feasted on them. Years flew by in this wild, carefree rhythm. One evening, Ariel spotted the tree monster loitering by the magic circle, waiting for Cedric. She knew she had to keep him from getting too attached to that guy from another world. They were supposed to spend hundreds, maybe thousands of years here, but Cedric barely stuck around. But this kid, like a burst of sunlight, lit up a forest that had been standing alone for ages. And Ariel kept hoping to spend every second she could with him. Later, 15-year-old Cedric found a shirt in the closet and prayed she'd let him keep it. For Ariel, time zipped by in the blink of an eye. But out in the real world, it kept ticking normally. That shirt used to hang on him, but now it's almost a perfect fit. Suddenly, the hero realized he'd caught up to her in height. Sure, he had to tiptoe to match, but Cedric was sure. Just a little more time, and he'd outgrow her. At that moment, the heroine realized if he'd been stuck in the forest so long, he should have been way behind his peers in height. But he'd grown. Now he looked his age. The forest's slow time, it didn't touch him. That night, the heroine returned to the magic circle. She stayed there for hours, trying to figure it out, until the tree monster showed up. Time's supposed to crawl for everyone in the forest, but Cedric's immune. That means his power, way stronger than Ashild's, what she used to lock down the forest. He's too young to tap into his full power yet, but it's only a matter of time. When that happens, the seal in the forest will get swallowed up by his magic, and the gates to another world will blast open again. Right then, the terrors of that old war will crash back into this world. She couldn't let that happen, so Ariel started brainstorming her next move. The next day, the young prince was stunned to find his magic circle had gone dead. He forced some magic through, but something was blocking it. The circle was intact, so the issue had to be on the other side. Cedric started wildly slamming the ground, screaming for Ariel. Total confusion written all over him. No magic, no power to fully shut it down. So she just sealed the entrance. The hero's desperate scream tore through the seal, and she heard every bit of it. She told herself everything was fine. After all, this day was coming one way or another. With Cedric gone for good, the house just felt dead quiet. 1,000 years passed like a heartbeat. She wanted to wipe the memory clean. First up, Ariel grabbed all the books off the table. As she tidied up, she spotted his clothes, haphazardly strewn across the floor. She suddenly spotted a hair from the hero on the floor. They decided to do a full deep clean, wipe out every trace of him. She figured Cedric would forget all about it soon enough. Hell, the world's got a million things to distract him. Out of nowhere, the heroine felt herself crashing into sleep. She fell into a dead sleep, and while she was out, the house cleaned up on its own. Those hairs, gone in no time. Ariel had no clue how long she'd sleep, but she prayed the hero'd let go of it all by then. Meanwhile, the prince was huddled in the rain on the magic circle, whispering her name like a prayer. A few days later, the housemaids were whispering, "Lord Cedric's gone off the deep end." The hero didn't leave the garden, stayed glued to that magic circle. No food, no sleep. Cedric was hammering the dirt with his fists, screaming her name like a madman. He looked even worse than before. People gave him a wide berth, full-on terrified. Even the prince didn't know what the hell he had to do to see Ariel again. Then, bam! He ran headfirst into some tall guy, who instantly muttered an apology. Ansel hoped the young master was still all there. Cedric shot him a wild glare and snapped, "Move! Now!" The spy watched the prince with narrowed eyes, and noticed his condition was worsening. He decided to try a different approach to get closer to him. After that, Cedric started scouring every source for info on the magical forest. But no leads turned up, and without the magic circle, he couldn't get in. Then he spotted a stack of books Ariel had given him during their last meeting, pushed aside. At the time, Cedric didn't get why she handed him so many at once. He could have taken them one by one. She figured it was homework. She was swamped soon and wanted to get it out of the way. Now, he realized she'd already known, back then, he wouldn't be able to come see her again. From that moment on, he set a goal: to find a way into that forest. After sleepless nights and hundreds of books, there was nothing. The maids lingered outside the door, waiting until Cedric dozed off at his desk before slipping in to clean. Creeping in on tiptoe, they started gathering the scattered books and putting them away. Cedric yanked one of the maids by the arm, furious that they'd touched his stuff without permission. Furious, he vowed to chop off their hands next time and tossed the maids out of the study. They knew if the room wasn't spotless, the butler would lose his temper, but the threat of losing his hands was all too real. Something like that had actually happened before. Meanwhile, Cedric held Ariel's books close to his chest. The last thing he had left of her. The hero couldn't figure out why she'd betrayed him and walked away. At first, he was hell-bent on tracking her down and ending her. But then he changed his tune, deciding to trap the heroine in a pitch-black room. No one could get in but him. Either way, the immediate goal was finding the forest. But without influence or cash, reaching it was next to impossible. The hero made his way to the magic circle, only to run into Ansel right there. The informant smirked and asked, "You here to get to the eastern forest, your highness?" He also dropped that he'd been tailing the prince's every move. Ansel also knew the circle's magic was jammed, but he still asked, "Want to get to the other side?" Cedric was baffled. Was this actually about sneaking into the forest without the magic circle? The informant knew monsters were guarding the place, so he figured, why not just send in an army of knights? The hero saw it as a joke, like how was he supposed to pull that off? Ansel gave him a long look, then smiled. "You're gonna need to become emperor." After the heir died suddenly, power split between the 3 surviving kids. The second son had full knight support, best shot at the throne. Third prince got church backing because his mom had noble blood. Brian was the 4th kid, backed by his mom's family clout from the elite aristocracy. So when Cedric heard the informant's words now, he snorted. 5th son of a lowly servant? Thought this kind of power play was impossible. Ansel rushed in, reminding his highness, "Ancient magic's still out there, and only he can use it. Empire ran on science and tech, then magic and engineering, least. Other power players exist, but the royal family flat out ignored them. That exact unchecked power? the informant planned to hand it to Cedric. In exchange, he wanted access to the Eastern Forest with His Highness himself. Inside that forest, the truth people have chased for centuries, the war secret that nearly destroyed the world, plus the force that stopped the war. They wanted to step in and dig up the lost truth. Hero blinked, confused. Who the hell are you talking about? Ansel clarified fast. I'm a rank 2 field agent from the Truth Seekers Special Unit. This whole organization will become the power of the future Emperor. Of course, as long as Cedric agrees to go with them. Ansel was determined to do whatever it took to make sure His Highness never regretted it, and would stand by him to the very end. With the prince's magic, they quickly gained the support of mages and engineers. Over time, they earned the knight's loyalty and crushed their enemies. 10 years after breaking the magic circle, Cedric became emperor and was ready to head into the forest. After some time, Ariel woke from her sleep and had no idea how long she'd been out. Stepping out of her bedroom, she saw everything was spotless. She then checked the magic circle and saw the seal was untouched, meaning it was still closed. Turning to the monster tree, she hoped it had protected the forest well while she was asleep. All feelings had faded by then, and everything was perfect now. Earlier, she'd heard the hero's desperate cry from the circle, but now it was silent. Ariel hoped he'd escaped his family and found his strength. Either way, she was glad things had returned to the peaceful bliss they'd started with. Suddenly, the heroine noticed a strange shadow beneath her. Glancing up at the sky, she was shocked to see dozens of meteorites hurtling toward the ground. A few seconds later, Ariel was thrown aside by a shockwave, and the forest erupted in flames. In the distance, she spotted the silhouette of a walking mage radiating unbelievable power. The heroine was confused. No clue who he was or what he wanted. She had no idea about his motives and decided to buy some time first. Right then, the attacker summoned a storm. A massive lightning bolt slammed into the ground beside Ariel. The heroine hit the ground and lost consciousness for a few seconds. As she gradually came to, all she could think about was getting out of there. The mage walked up, flashed a smile, and asked if she was okay. Ariel didn't recognize him and had no idea why he'd even attacked the forest. But a guy with that confident, smug attitude? He probably thought he could boss anyone around. The heroine stayed on edge. No clue what he was up to. Right then, Cedric suddenly made her an offer. Ariel was stunned. This guy had bombarded her with meteors, caused a storm, and now he's suddenly making her an offer? She figured he was a lunatic looking to start a war. Besides, how did he even know her name? Looking at this man's face, she got the feeling they'd met before. Then it hit her, Cedric. This mage looked just like him. The hero sat down beside her, finally realizing he'd missed her a lot over the past 10 years. Ariel lost her words and stared at him, stunned. Cedric wanted to see her so badly, he even burned down a forest on a whim. He figured it was his wedding present. The heroine was confused. Did he really mean all those mountains of ash as a gift? The hero suddenly wanted to check out the magic circle. In the same second, he grabbed Ariel and lifted her into the air. Ariel was shocked and ordered him to let her go immediately. Turns out, he'd wanted to do this the moment they met. After 10 years, his wish finally came true. Setting her back on the ground, Cedric insisted they head to the magic circle together. Ariel noticed he'd grown a lot over the years. She was also shocked he still remembered her, and the forest. Later, the hero found the seals on the magic circle and quickly patched it up. He figured now was the time to take the heroine. He'd made it here and found her after all. Ariel's feelings weren't even a factor. She glanced back and realized the roots of the tree monsters were still intact. They'd come back later. Plus, it was her first time leaving the forest since the war. She wasn't sure if the forest's magical seal was still holding up. Meanwhile, the Emperor gave the return order. When the order's commander called him by title, Ariel froze up. But just then, the magic circle kicked in and zapped them straight to the Imperial Garden. The heroine saw 2 lines of servants waiting to greet their masters respectfully. Ansel had a feeling they'd be back today, so he got everyone ready. He just hoped the king's trip went off without a hitch, but Cedric blew him off and made a beeline for the palace. He also found out everything was set up exactly as he'd ordered. Ariel snapped and asked, "Did you actually pull off becoming emperor?" The hero quickly clarified he did it to get into the enchanted forest, but the heroine was still confused. He was a prince and a plain kid everyone in the house looked down on. Cedric thought the story was too long and decided to save it for later. Besides, they had plenty of time for each other now. The emperor led Ariel to his palace. She was going to spend a long time with him there. The heroine was completely lost, didn't know what to think. So Cedric clarified he became emperor for her. No other way into the forest existed. He also planned to make Ariel his empress. The girl and everyone around her were in total shock after hearing that. The hero figured she had nowhere else to go. The forest was burned down, and the house was about to fall apart. After that, he led the heroine to her new room. He personally designed it, hoping Ariel would like it. After shooing her inside, Cedric wished her a good rest. The heroine tried to say something, but the door slammed in her face. Hearing the lock click shut from the other side, she froze even harder. She didn't get it. Why was the whole room bathed in those deep red tones? Every piece of furniture was red. Hell, even the wallpaper and carpets. The canopy looked like it was about to start dripping blood any second. Ariel was confused. Was he seriously paying her back like this for her ditching him 10 years ago? Plus, her clothes were still dirty from all the chaos. Even that cleaning spell hadn't worked. She flopped onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, mind racing. How did it all spiral into this? Now she knew Cedric was a prince back then. Got it, why he kept his status under wraps. But back then, things were good between them. Studying magic, having a blast. After all that kindness, was he seriously gonna repay her with revenge? Ariel was worried. Her head was going to crash, and those nightmares might come back. When she shut her eyes, she found herself on a battlefield. Up until the end, she believed all those people were still alive. Behind her, the desperate screams of dead souls blaming the princess for everything echoed. Ariel lost her voice. Shock and horror froze her. Off to the side, she spotted a body lying on the ground. She turned pale with fear, eyes wide in disbelief as she recognized him. Cradling Daniel's cold body, she let out a shuddering sob. Panicking, she didn't know what to do. Nothing was left. When she realized she'd lost everything, Ariel's eyes snapped open. Tears cascaded down her cheeks. In an instant, she knew. This was just a dream. Right then, Cedric materialized at her side. "Who's Daniel?" he asked. She swayed, ready to pass out, but the Emperor snatched her up. He noted she was okay, but that didn't stop him from asking, again. "Who the heck is Daniel?" She tried to push him off, but her foot caught. She landed flat on her back, sprawled right in front of him. The air crackled with awkward tension. The heroine's face burned instantly. Against her expectations, Cedric scooped her up, gently lowering her to the bed's edge. Crouching beside her, he stared at her face. "How many secrets are you keeping?" he wondered. He believed, someday, she'd come clean with everything. He also realized, dreams like that would wreck anyone's sleep. She didn't get it. How do you even sleep in a nut house? Cedric's probably trying to get back at her and drive her insane. Otherwise, why go through all this trouble redecorating her room like this? Turns out, he just wanted to surprise Ariel. He remembered red was her favorite color, and wanted to give her a space she'd love. The heroine recalled how they'd strolled through that forest clearing, covered in red wildflowers back then. When he saw Ariel in that red dress, the prince figured that must be her go-to color. Ariel smiled and nodded, totally on board with his idea. But remembering that chat, she couldn't wrap her head around how something so small could be the cause. She bolted upright, convinced the hero had no clue what was going on. Meanwhile, Anselm was eavesdropping in the hallway. Same conclusion, same vibe. Either way, that red room wasn't an attack. It was a genuine gift. Thinking about it that way, the room didn't seem so terrible after all. Still, the heroine called for the room to be reset to normal. Cedric didn't know her style, but Ariel didn't mind a bit. He agreed to tweak things little by little, and Ariel suggested starting with those door locks. Cedric ruffled her hair, muttered that locks were for safety, then led her to the dining hall. Before that, he told the two maids to show her around and help her freshen up. Ariel suddenly realized she could have just told them to take her back to the woods instead of switching rooms. The Emperor was happy to see she was still easy to trick if you just distracted her. Later, the maids were waiting for the new Empress at the bathroom door. One of them was furious the woman didn't even know basic etiquette. Her co-worker reminded herself this was His Majesty's guest, soon to be Empress. That just made the maid even angrier, thinking about Princess Rosemary and Miss Violetta. How could some total nobody become the ruler? The other maid decided to stay quiet to avoid trouble. If they wanted to keep their jobs at the palace, they had to watch what they said. She figured she'd personally deliver the guests' clothes and told the grumpy maid to work on her face instead. The maid seethed at her co-worker's reply and called her a coward. After a while, the room took on a decent color. The heroine washed up, ate, and now her brain was working again. To get back to the forest, she needed a magic circle. She could try finding another way, but would she even make it out of the castle? The Emperor will definitely keep a close eye on her and not let her go so easily. Plus, Ariel just couldn't get used to him. Her cute little Cedric had grown into a big, serious dude. The hero figured she just liked little kids, and when he grew up, he became useless to her, and she dumped him. But the whole problem was entirely his magical powers. Ariel didn't know how to explain it. While Cedric was beating himself up for getting older, the heroine was confused and didn't get how the conversation had veered into this territory so fast. She decided she was just faking it and playing the victim card. And yet the hero was just so cute, you couldn't leave him in that downbeat state. But Ariel had no clue how to wipe away his tears. Right then, Cedric got an idea and suddenly went all serious. He figured, if that's the case, why not just get rid of all the kids? If everyone younger than him vanished, he'd get less of Ariel's attention. The heroine turned pale with horror and started begging him to leave the kids alone. Right then, the Emperor suddenly pulled her close. He figured that was enough for one day. He was aching to spend the night with Ariel, but held back for now. He slipped out the door, leaving the girl totally baffled. He pressed his hand to the door, triggering the magic seal that locked it. Cedric smirked, happy the heroine hadn't noticed the door's magic trap. She had no magical talent, yet she was sharp with magic. The Emperor made sure Ariel had no chance of escaping. No way she'd even think to run. At the same time, she decided Cedric was still the same little brat. The heroine was still in the dark and feeling uneasy. 10 years ago, when the magic circle sealed shut, the hero made it his mission to keep her from ever leaving. He became emperor to lock her in the golden cage called the Imperial Palace. He didn't want to let her go anymore, and if he had to die, he'd do it right here. Meanwhile, the mages found a strange, eerie seal in the magical forest. They realized the spellcaster who made it was way beyond their level. They immediately reported to the Emperor without hesitation. Not long after, Cedric found out about it from Ansel's report. The informant called off the investigation. No mage could crack the Great Eskilda's seal, but this thing looked seriously creepy, like something was trying to claw its way out. That night, the palace chamberlain, bitter about the Emperor's chosen one, slapped a set of temporary clothes on the lady. She also had to handle her new room until they found a proper maid for the heroine. Plus, the woman handed Ariel a list of approved places to visit and bolted out the door. The heroine scanned the list and realized Cedric was trying to cage her here, to stop her from moving. No other choice but to read it. She flipped open the booklet and froze. She had no clue what the hell this script was. While she was stuck in that time-frozen forest, the world kept evolving, and a new writing system appeared. That's why Cedric couldn't read those ancient books at first. Suddenly, Ariel realized she was a powerful, all-knowing witch who couldn't read. That kind of cringe? Not happening. She sprinted out into the hallway. The chamberlain smirked at her and asked, "What's your problem?" At that moment, the heroine realized she had no idea how to explain what was wrong. First things first, we needed to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. Suddenly, she spotted an ancient inscription on the wall next to the maid. As she stepped closer to examine it, she was instantly told to leave it alone. The lady's maid was furious she was about to touch a priceless item without knowing a thing about it. Ariel was stunned. Could this thing actually be valuable? The maid clarified it was a painting by the great witch Ashild from the ancient kingdom of Arendal. She considered it priceless and refused to let the heroine ruin national heritage with her touch. Ariel was completely lost and had no clue how to respond. The great Ashild drew this out of boredom during magic class. Picking up on new awkwardness, Ariel was utterly flustered. But then she heard the maid's voice, calling her a clueless bumpkin who didn't even know basic etiquette. Ariel stared at her, baffled. Where did all this hostility from the servant come from? She decided to ask, did she look that out of her depth? That even a maid scolded her over something so trivial? The maid got even angrier, insisting it wasn't trivial at all. It was Imperial Palace treasure. In that moment, as she looked at Ariel, the maid suddenly fell silent. The heroine decided to check. Was palace protocol really about humiliating the emperor's guest? The maid flinched, totally lost. Where had this tense vibe suddenly come from? Her eyes were dripping with aristocratic pride and superiority. But how did a simple country girl's gaze hold so much nobility and dignity? Ariel wanted to know. What had the lady's maid done to end up standing here now? At that moment, the maid realized her mistake, dropped to her knees, begging for forgiveness. The heroine placed her hand on the maid's head, labeling her a total snob. Was this palace so elite that even the staff ignored the emperor's guests? If they were treating her this way, Ariel thought, it was terrifying to imagine how they treated Cedric. In the past, nobody cared that Brian beat him. But now, they even ignored him for having no power. The heroine thought everything had changed now that he was emperor. Could he, with his personality, just turn a blind eye to such treatment? Though, because of his nature, he probably just didn't stress over it. Just then, Cedric burst out, wanting to know what had gone down. Seeing Ariel step out in just a nightgown, he immediately tossed his cloak over her. The heroine figured it wasn't important right now, and started teaching the servant girls the basics of etiquette. First off, these girls had zero respect for His Majesty. Even if he didn't care, if the staff didn't show proper respect, the emperor's authority would crumble. Let them think he was a powerless prince. Basic respect was still non-negotiable. What if more people started ignoring His Majesty? Cedric glared at the servants, mind racing. Did they really think he was a powerless prince? At that moment, the lady-in-waiting and the other maids went deathly pale. Then he smirked and played the part of a powerless underdog. A fake tear welled up in his eye. He prayed Ariel would save him. The heroine suddenly saw him as a sad little puppy. Ansel and the order commander silently begged her not to buy this nonsense. But Ariel slammed her fist against her chest, vowing she'd have his back. Cedric beamed and leaned in, curious why she'd jumped to his defense so fast. The heroine's mind blanked. She couldn't read, and panic hit. She recalled how the hero had once struggled with ancient scripts too, until she taught him. She handed him the book and admitted she couldn't make sense of the words. To her surprise, the emperor looked genuinely pleased she couldn't read. Back then, he'd have done anything to teach her whatever she wanted to learn. But now, Ariel had just dumped him without looking back. The heroine had no response. The Emperor smiled again, wishing her luck with her studies. If she knows nothing, she'll just have to trust him. He sent Ariel back to her room and told her to rest up. Then, with a thoughtful look, he turned to the others. Ariel had misunderstood everything, and Cedric found it oddly intriguing. Plus, she'd worried about his status. Ansel thought she should be briefed properly, but the Emperor didn't see the need. She doesn't seem like the simple type. Her vibe's the kind that commands legions. That kind of intimidating presence? Only people who've earned the top seat wear it so naturally. As a kid, Cedric didn't think much of it. But as time passed, he started getting the sense Ariel was hiding a lot. When he turned to the lady-in-waiting, he just couldn't believe it. Had she been the one who tore him down? The servant girl burst into tears, realizing she'd been a little rude to his guest. He reminded her coldly that he'd brought this girl to the palace as the future empress. The chambermaid admitted her guilt, and he decided she had to die. Knights from the order snatched her up. She couldn't believe what was happening. When they dragged her away, Cedric ordered another round of training for all the servants on how to act around Ariel. In an instant, the whole empire buzzed that His Majesty had brought a dirty country girl into the palace. Finding out she couldn't even read, the nobles called it absurd. No one could figure out how this beggar had seduced the emperor himself. Soon after, the designer Larare arrived at the heroine's door with her assistants. They wanted to make the future empress's best outfit and started by taking her measurements. Ariel couldn't believe there was so much fuss since early morning. Cedric quickly added that if she was staying, she needed to dress the part. The heroine thought, well, if that's the case, she could wear some off-the-rack dresses. Meanwhile, the designer's assistants gawked at Ariel and whispered behind her back. Larare finished up the measurements and tossed her a catalog to pick a design. The first thing Ariel noticed was that the modern style was way different from the ancient stuff. At the time, the women were picking out a color that'd suit the heroine. Then the emperor butted in and declared she was totally into red and hydrangeas. Ariel was freaking out. No way she wanted that crimson dress with red hydrangeas. When she realized it was his plan, she couldn't believe he was actually going to sew up some fancy trash. The heroine was pissed and told him to let the pros handle it. Everyone was stunned by how smoothly she shut down His Majesty. It was like training a dog, pure dominance. The women were baffled. Was Ariel actually his owner? It sparked the second wave of palace rumors. Emperor gone feral, chained up like a rabid dog. When she heard this, the heroine was sure she'd lose her mind. Only way out? Run like hell as fast as possible. But the catch? She couldn't read a lick and had zero cash. So first things first, she had to get permission to check out the palace's magic circle. No magic, no way she could use it. But hey, she was just curious. What did the circle look like outside the forest? Cedric was all in. He had something he wanted to show her too. Ariel was totally confused at first. But once she got what was going on, she was completely flabbergasted. She had no clue why the palace had turned into a magical forest. Seeing his lady after so long, the tree monster sprinted toward her with open arms. He also instantly recognized the hero and was just as happy to see him. During the forest raid, the tree monster accidentally took a swing at Cedric. Now he was over the moon that they were both fine. The Emperor had blessed the beast with his magic and ordered it to guard the forest alongside the teleportation circle. Watching the tree monster's grin, Ariel just didn't get what was so great about the guy who laid waste with meteor showers. Cedric went in carefully, avoiding the main event, giving things time to heal. The spot where you could teleport into the forest via the magic circle used to be in southern Arundel. It couldn't be moved, so Ariel was scratching her head. Why was the circle here now? Turns out it was an ancient relic they dug up on a farm. One of the old emperors was a magic nut and built a new palace right on top of the circle's location. Unfortunately, no one knew how to use it, so they abandoned it. Cedric stumbled onto the circle and teleported into the forest. Time barely moves in that forest. 1,000 years passed here, yet it's surprisingly intact. The heroine suddenly realized she'd used the wrong preservation magic on the seal. It was the magic of another legendary mage, Akelner, the one they'd shared a lab with back at the forest cottage. The spell was seriously strong, so strong that even after a millennium, the circle was still flawless. As a kid, Cedric never got it. But over time, he realized how weird that forest really was. Living in that house was awesome. Always clean, always food on the table. Plus there's Ariel. She hasn't aged a day, even though years have gone by. She looked exactly how she did the day they met, like time forgot her. The heroine played dumb. That forest, with its frozen time, was steeped in the magic of the legendary sorceress Ashild. And Ariel lived there, book-smart about magic, but zero actual power. At one point, Cedric even thought she was a shield. That's when he started digging into every scrap about the Great Witch. And that's when he ran into the name Akelner, the legendary mage. That wizard had a ton of relics, and the hero learned how to tell his magic apart. Then, deep in Ashild's magic-filled forest, he suddenly felt Akelner's power. But the guy who'd been living in the forest with Ariel was Daniel. At the time, the heroine couldn't believe he'd even guessed it was that legendary wizard. But the Emperor was troubled because during his research, he'd heard there was a love affair between Ashild and Akelnar. Ariel thought he'd lost his mind. Everything was totally different. She was in shock. Where the hell did those ridiculous rumors even come from? Impossible. Daniel was her own older brother. Meanwhile, Violetta was praying in front of the altar. Suddenly, she heard the oracle's voice echo through the hall. The prophecy revealed a dark energy was hanging over the imperial palace. Later, the temple attendants were gossiping about the village Tamere, who was about to become empress. When they saw Lady Violetta standing there, they immediately apologized. Lady Kelton was the only one who heard the god's voice, and the first empress candidate. She was shocked the emperor had picked someone else as his chosen one. She remembered the recent prophecy and realized something was off in the palace. Daniel Akenar Lauderdale Arundel was the prince and a powerful mage, 2 years older than the heroine. They were always sparring with magic, but as soon as they started fighting, Serena Lashella Elspeth Arundel, the crown princess, would show up. Big Sister would stop the fight and give them a lecture. Sure, they had their quirks, but overall, they were a normal family. Now, Cedric wanted to know what their deal was with Akenar and Ashild. Ariel figured she didn't know and told him to dig through his own records, but she knew he'd probably already pieced it together. Bad news for the heroine. She had zero interest in revealing her true identity. She'd been around for centuries and didn't want to turn into a 1,000-year-old crone. It wasn't a huge problem, but a delicate one. Time to bail on the palace ASAP? Best bet was heading back to the woods. But the Emperor wouldn't just let her walk out. Either way, she decided to take the plunge and go talk to him. As soon as Ariel opened the door, His Majesty popped up right in front of her. She quickly made it clear she wanted to go back to the forest and agreed not to break the magic circle. Cedric thought it over and called it impossible. There's no home there anymore. Ariel didn't see the issue. If everything's wrecked, just slap a restoration spell on it. The Emperor clarified. No, he didn't just destroy the house. He erased it from the planet, molecule by molecule. And while he was at it, he grabbed her stuff. The mages lost their minds. First time they'd ever seen that many ancient tomes. Right then, she realized the palace staff rushing around were hurting her belongings. Grasping the disaster's scale, she bolted for the balcony, staring at the servants hauling her gear. She caught something weird. One slipped up and let go of a book. Ariel caught it. She froze. Her own diary. Her heart nearly skipped a beat. Then she overheard the mages going wild over the entries in that book. One of them blinked. Ashilda's name wasn't the only one in there. Akelnar's was too. The wizards lost it. This wasn't just any diary. It was a goldmine of research from 2 legendary mages. Only she grimaced, recalling it was just her teenage scribblings. She smirked at Cedric, hoping he'd track down those pages for her. The mages noticed Akilnara's name kept coming up, and figured Ashild must have really loved him. But it was just a bunch of teen angst rants Ariel wrote at 15, bashing her brother. To the Emperor, it didn't make sense. Why did the heroine need this? How were those 2 mages even connected? Ariel snapped and blurted out, "I'm Ashild!" Her voice full of rage. She thought Cedric already knew, but turns out he was just guessing. Cedric wanted to hear the truth straight from her lips. Now that the truth was out, Ariel demanded her stuff back. Right the hell now. The Emperor glanced at the mages and realized they weren't giving up the treasure without a fight. The heroine couldn't believe it. Was he this weak he couldn't even boss them around? Cedric smirked and ordered Ansel to bring everything up this instant. If the wizards protested, they'd just seize more items from the forest and lock them in palace storage. The informant decided to let at least one notebook stay in the pile. The Emperor dove into reading it, eyes wide with fascination. The heroine froze. He could read the ancient language, unlike everyone else. She lunged for the pages, but the hero held him high above her head. Ariel was fuming and demanded the notebook back right away. If Cedric even dares read a single word, she'll turn around and vanish back into the woods. The Emperor was stunned she was about to leave him again. Truth is, he was barely holding himself back. 10 long years staring at that sealed magic circle, on the edge of despair. At one point, he vowed that when he finally saw her, he'd kill her for this. He wanted to destroy the heroine for not being his. But the thought of her not existing in this world, that gnawed at him. So he scrapped his original plan. Now, he wanted to keep her alive, capture, bring her in, lock her up. Even thought about hiding her somewhere secret, just so he could see her. The hero smirked, thinking this was why she shouldn't be pissing him off. Besides, didn't she owe him a reward for all this patience? Ariel looked away, clarifying it was just her diary. That just made Cedric more eager. He flipped through the pages with even more excitement. The heroine panicked again and ordered the notebook burned on the spot. The Emperor didn't hesitate. He set the notebook ablaze right away. He was still curious. What kind of relationship had Ashild and Akelnar even had? When he heard they were siblings, Cedric couldn't believe it. Had she really killed him? Realizing they weren't romantically involved, he gave a genuine smile. Akelnar's name had bugged him before, but now everything was smooth sailing. If they'd been lovers, the hero would have tracked down the sorcerer's remains and destroyed them himself. And if he couldn't find them, he'd have used black magic to resurrect Akelnar, just to kill him again. Now he just wanted to know one thing. Why had Ariel gone to such lengths to hide her identity? When he heard the reason was her age, he laughed wholeheartedly. But he didn't get it. Shouldn't she be bragging about being a legendary witch with a string of accomplishments instead? Even the magical circle she left behind was still in use. Still active, still powerful. At that moment, the heroine's expression darkened. She decided her greatest act wasn't among her listed achievements. 1,000 years ago, the world was destroyed beyond repair. Countless lives lost. Ariel had been the one who caused it all.